Sorry, everyone. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the ESTA's weekly COVID-19 webinar. I'm just going to show you our panel here tonight. We have joining us this evening Phil Ed, who's the CEO of ESTA. We have Ingrid Perrin, who is the new Regional Officers Coordinator, John Shaler, who's the chair of ESTA, and Dale Chambers, who's the head of strings at Guildford Grammar School, reaching out to hundreds of children this week. I'm Nicole Wilson. I'm the director of Musical Orbit and also one of the trustees of ESTA. And we're here to help you get online, help support you during this crisis. And tonight we're going to be covering safeguarding, copyright, and also reaching out to your local teachers who are really close by but feel very far away at the moment. So first of all, I'd like to introduce you to John, who's going to say a few words. John, you had your first online lesson this week. How did that go?
Well, thank you, Nicole. I've done 4. I've done a massive 4, 2 more tomorrow. It's been an interesting week. A week's a long time in this crisis, and it's been certainly a very interesting one for me. The lessons I gave seemed to go rather well, much to everyone's amazement. The safeguarding thing, which is what a lot of this broadcast is about, I avoided, hopefully, and I want to hear other people's opinions on this, by having the parents of the children present throughout the lessons, and the one adult that I taught was fine, of course, no problem there. The vehicles I used were Zoom and Skype and also FaceTime, and the same problems seem to arise in all of them. There's a delay, so duet playing is really not very feasible, certainly until the pupils are really secure, and then they can play with you and you just have to accept that they're a quaver behind you, because that seemed to be, roughly speaking, the delay that I encountered. I'm sure there's a time that I could give, but I prefer to call it an allegro quaver of delay. You have to demonstrate and ask them to repeat back if there's a problem. The other element was that I'd like to mention was the charging, actually, fees. I gave these opening first lessons for nothing, and agreed with the parents that when we all felt it was doing the job, that we would all agree that they could then start paying me again. I can afford to do this. I'm in a happy position, of course, to be able to do that. It's been a very interesting time and very positive. There were things that happened in the lessons which I think wouldn't have happened face to face. And there were plenty of things that didn't happen that would have done. But it's a different world, and it's one we're faced with for the foreseeable future. So I can strongly recommend it to everyone.
Fantastic. We've had a few questions already come in. Please do send any questions you have in now through the Facebook page, and we will answer as many of them as we can during this webinar. If we don't manage to answer them during the webinar, we will answer them afterwards. So please do keep them coming in. We've already had some questions, though, from Linda was our first question, asking, could recordings of lessons be given via Zoom's free app? Now, you can record the lessons. I shall just pass over briefly to Phil on this one in a second. I'd say that the big thing here would be having permission to do it. We'll talk about permissions in a second, but the practicalities of it is when you set the lesson, when you schedule the lesson, if you do it from your account within the browser, you can set it to record. If you schedule it from the app, you can't. But when you're in the lesson itself, the host can set it to record. So if you've scheduled the meeting, you can record it. Now, if you're on a free account, you can record to your computer. If you're on a licensed account, you can record to the cloud. You can also let your student record it. They try and press record and it will tell them they have to ask your permission. What you do then is you go to manage participants, then the participants who are in the meeting will appear on the right-hand side. You hover over to the right of their name and it will be a drop-down list will appear and you press allow record. They then try and record again and it will then record at their end. So that's the practicalities of doing it. However, the legalities, Phil, perhaps you could talk us through that a little bit.
Yeah, thanks, Nicole. As we mentioned last week, actually, with online teaching, obviously it's a different environment to face-to-face, and we all agree that having the lesson recorded does have its advantages, because the child and the parent can revisit the lesson through the week, which is great. However, we do need to make sure that we carefully consider the safeguarding issues. If you're employed by a music service or school, then it's an easy answer, because you must just follow their set protocols. So I think really we're talking about the private sector at the moment. And what I would advise is that both parties need to give their approval for the recording to take place. And it's really important to set these rules and protocols out in advance of the lesson. So you must agree to be recorded, and you must get the permission of the parent for the recording to take place as well. And there's a little bit of trust here as well, because it's good to have that in a written agreement before the lesson commences, and to also make clear how you expect the recordings to be used, because you don't want to see them on an episode of Candid Camera 10 years from now.
We've just had a question come in talking about tuning the instrument. Yes, I mean, obviously, when you're in the lesson, if it's not in tune and the child can't tune it, then you just take it from them and you do it, right? I imagine that there must be a video out there, somebody explaining tuning. There's a challenge for you all. Perhaps somebody could make us one. I think the thing here would be to get the parent involved. Would you agree, John? Have you come across that yet?
No, we've always tuned up, and I did, fortunately, even the quite young ones, I've taught them about the adjusters and how they work. If the pegs slip and the strings are hopelessly out of tune, and there's a real danger of somebody who doesn't know what they're doing breaking a string, then my fallback position, because of course these lessons are always, you can always reschedule them, nobody's going anywhere. So you just postpone the lesson, ask the parents to come round, drop the instrument outside the front door, I tune it up, and they pick it up, and there we go. Problem solved, and we have the lesson later on in the day. With the number of lessons Dale's giving, I'm not sure whether that's a practical way, but for me, with my limited number of pupils, I can do that.
I was just going to say, Dale on his desert island there, nobody can drop their instrument at your door. What do you do, Dale?
Well, we're teaching 250 children in year 4 a week at the moment, and the very first video I sent out was a video for parents. It was sent out on a private YouTube channel. It's a 4-minute video, and it's an instruction on how to tune your violin and your cello, with always the instruction to release the peg by tuning it down, even if it's a little bit too flat. I give the tuning notes for the four strings in each case, played on the piano, played on the violin and the cello as well. And with a bit of luck, we won't break too many strings in the next couple of months.
There's also great apps out there. There's metronome apps which have tuners on, tuning apps. And you can get, obviously don't have to have a piano or another instrument to tune to. You can use things like that. We've also had a question come in saying, what's the best way to share physical notes with the pupil, lesson notes? So when I teach, I use the chat function in Zoom. I type them all in there. And then at the end of the meeting, it downloads them to my computer and I email them to the parent. I then have a copy and they have a copy. So it's actually better, really, isn't it, than having the live notebook option. I might carry on after this COVID thing's finished, typing it all up, maybe, I'm not sure. Phil, you had something to say there.
Yes, I was going to say the other thing you can do is screen share, because if you want to mark their parts or burr their parts, you could do that in pencil on your part and maybe hold it up. Or if you've got a PDF of the part, you could screen share. So,
I have to ask at that, sorry Dale, I was just going to say, I have to ask that point about copyright on that. Is that what you were going to mention, Dale?
No, it wasn't. It was about screen sharing. That my experience for my secondary school pupils is that most of them have been receiving their lessons on their telephones this week. And the most scary thing you've ever seen is a boy leaning into the camera to see the screen a little bit closer. I think screen sharing only works on slightly larger screens.
Yes.
Very good point. Very good point. What about sharing music through the chat function or emailing it to, I mean, obviously it's the really obvious thing that people would want to do, especially as their children, you know, their students can't necessarily buy the music they want at the moment. You know, music shops aren't a key workers paradise, are they? So Phil, can you talk us through a little bit the minefield that is, should we be sharing PDFs or photos of music online?
Well, it's a really good question. It all depends what the music is. For example, if it's out of copyright, and there are many websites where you can find this. I think that the most popular one, which most people use, is Petrucci. If you Google that, it's a whole library of music there that is out of copyright and you can download. And therefore, if you screen share, it's fine. However, we've had one teacher write in last week, after last week's broadcast, to say, would it be possible to host all the music, their music library, in a folder on Google Drive, and then send invites out to parents and students for them to access it? And things like that are a clear breach of copyright. There's no difference between that and physically photocopying the part and sharing it out. So we must be careful not to do that. I think Dale mentioned earlier on, just before we went live, that ABRSM had announced today that they were lifting all the copyright restrictions on their music. So that's obviously a fantastic and generous thing for ABRSM to do. However, if you are uncertain and you're concerned about, you know, doing the right thing and not getting caught out, one of our corporate partners, Hal Leonard, were very kind enough to offer to take your questions if you use our writing directly to ESTA, support@estastrings.org.uk. We can pass those on to Hal Leonard, and they're very happy to give a precise legal answer on any sort of technical copyright matters you may want to raise.
Great. We've had a question come in actually about a more sort of practical question here. Last week, in last week's webinar, we talked about using 2 screens for teaching. And this person's asking, I don't know the name of this person, Sheila, perhaps you could tell me who the person is that asked this lesson. Sheila's here, by the way. You can't see Sheila. She's like in the ether, fielding questions for us and being really helpful. So last week we recommended using 2 screens. What's the best setup? So we talked particularly about pianos last week and how it's really great to have one screen in front of you, so the teacher can see your face, and one showing down the keyboard, so that the teacher can see your hands, and vice versa for the student. With string instruments, you don't necessarily need to. You can have 2. You could have a close up and a far away. That could be a really helpful one. I just want to remind everybody, though, only to have audio on one of those devices. Don't put it on both. And it was Fiona Duncan who asked that. So thank you, Fiona. That was very helpful. She also asked about headphones. You know, if you have a pupil and a parent there, how are headphones going to work? Now, you can buy headphone splitters, little things that plug into the headphone jack, and then 2 of them come out, so you can both be on headphones. I was doing that with my son in his piano lesson the other day. He was very annoyed that I could hear everything that he could hear. But also I wanted to say, remember that headphones and the original sound function, which we talked about before, isn't always the best option. It's always worth a go. If you've got a licensed account and you've got that option to try it, do try it. But it involves a little bit of tweaking. You have to experiment with that student. Everybody's device is slightly different, their broadband's slightly different, their headphones will be different. You know, if they're Bluetooth headphones, they don't always speak. So you're going to have to spend a bit of time sorting it out, and just embrace that, accept that's going to happen, because you only really need to set up properly once, and then you know, you're good to go then. So that's a really good thing. We've also got what's the best hygienic method of cross-contamination? Well, the best hygienic method of not cross-contaminating, I think, when parents drop instruments off. So I suppose really what we're talking about here, Dale, would you like to take this one? How do we clean the instruments, get the coronavirus off the strings and the bow?
Well, thank you for landing the health question fair and squarely on a violin teacher's shoulders. I've absolutely no idea, but you know, if you wipe things down, or if you I think wearing gloves is the safest thing. You wear gloves. That's what all the workers are doing that we see around who are having to work. If you wear gloves, it's perfectly possible with a pair of kind of surgical gloves or decorator's gloves to do most things with the violin. Hand it back and then discard the gloves. That's where I would go with that.
Yes, Ingrid's got some comments on this.
I have a little tip, which is an old-fashioned one with an old-fashioned product. If people are running out of hand sanitizer to sweep up and down the fingerboard or the strings, any proper eau de cologne, such as old-fashioned 4711, is the desirable over 60% alcohol. In fact, it's near 80 or 90%. So that's a very good thing. And it smells beautiful, of course, lifts the spirits.
It does. I love 4711. It's fantastic. Yeah. Be careful not to get it on the varnish, though.
100% not on the varnish.
Brush it off, and be careful on the stick of the bow as well. Yeah. In fact, now you're here, Ingrid. Thank you very much for joining us. Perhaps you could tell us a little bit about your new role, because it's rather timely. I think we rather need you, don't we?
Oh, I like to feel needed. It is a new role within ESTA that previously Sheila has fielded, and now it's something that's just entirely for me to sort out. So I'm here to support regional officers, and also here to start recruiting new officers, because there are quite a lot of areas that we haven't yet got, they're not yet blessed or not currently blessed with their own regional officer. I'm very easy to find on the Facebook groups, the ESTA Facebook groups. I'm always happy to answer questions about how I can help you and offer support. Would you like me to talk a little bit about the role of a regional officer? Or should we talk about that later?
No, that would be great. That would be
lovely. Well, the main role is to build a community of members within the county where you live. So you have an incredibly important link. Your role is to join, to work between the ESTA team, so that's everybody, a lot of the people you see here, and the members in your region. And I can support you, I can encourage you as you're doing that, identifying people, and sometimes I might even chivvy you along a little bit in the nicest possible way to make sure you're performing the duties that are expected. We've helped you quite a lot. I think Phil has worked on, he's devised a timeline, so it's very clear what you need to do. The role starts in November every year. And then within the first 4 months, you would set, well, within the first month, you set up a house meeting. So you meet up your members. At the moment, obviously, well, I'll loop back to that about what we can be doing currently. And all the tasks on the timeline help you promote and consolidate what ESTA does for its members, which I'm sure will agree at the moment is a huge thing. It's very, very important, very supportive community. You'll help members put on events, run their events during the year. You'll help maybe devise them, help them devise them. To help other teachers. There are guidelines for all of that I can talk you through from start to finish, how to put on an event. And you'll be posting on social media. So it's generally building engagement across your community. If you're in an area already and you know a few teachers, which you probably do, this is a good way of optimizing that, drawing them together into a community that serves ESTA and serves your community as well. And you have to write a report, but again, that's a brief report and it's easy peasy. So for all these duties, you have a lovely bundle of benefits that comes with the role. So you have an allowance of £200, which ESTA holds for you. And any time you want to use it, for instance, you might want to use it towards the summer school. You might want to use it to cover your own membership. You might want to share it. You might want to spread the love a little bit. So if you know a few people who'd like to have the membership, that money's there. That's something you can do for them, which is a nice way of paying things forward. You get free events, free entry to the events, lots of supports. You get your own email address, and you get the satisfaction of a role really well done. So it's a very nice feel-good post, I think. And we could really do with you at the moment. We have 45 areas, 45 counties, and we have about, I think we have 11 officers in place at the moment, all doing sterling stuff, but we would love to find some more.
I think Phil's got a thought, or he's just waving his hand.
No, that was...
Oh, he was literally just waving his hand.
Perhaps, yes.
He's feeling lonely there. Oh, but now is actually a really amazing time to get to know some of the teachers in your area, maybe slightly wider area than you would normally be dealing with, and we can start right now with with online support groups, can't we?
It couldn't be better. It literally couldn't be a better time. If you're thinking, well, November's a long way away. If you are in the role at the moment, perhaps your event has had to be cancelled or postponed, you can absolutely reach out to your members. You can recruit more members. You can find out how to help your members. And perhaps at the moment when we're all looking at online teaching, and some of us, I'm speaking for myself maybe, but probably not just myself, it's quite stressful, the whole process of starting with a new platform. Maybe you've used to one platform and then you're working on a school platform, so you're working on Teams and you're also working on Zoom, and everything's got a little bit of a different way of working. This could be a lovely way if you could help your members maybe practice a bit with each other, set up a lesson. If you're a teacher who's dying to do this, or maybe you've got a pupil booked into the diary for next week and you're thinking, I really need to practice this. What a great way to meet up with another member and do an online lesson in between the two of you to help iron out any little wrinkles there might be, make you feel confident.
Thanks, Ingrid. That's brilliant. So do let us know if you fancy being one of those.
May I just to put something in there, Nicole? I think one of the Ingrid's talking about events. Well, I don't think events are going to happen for a while, but online meetings, even small ones, just like neighbour meetings, within a village or a community or part of a town or part of a city. Just the local teachers getting together in a way that they can't at the moment, and finding an online way of doing that, like we're doing right now. We're using Zoom, but it doesn't have to be Zoom, it can be Skype or whatever. And having informal online meetings. The only thing that would be missing will be the glass of wine, but I'm sure you can supply your own.
I don't know, I'm running out very quickly at my end. There you go. We've got an interesting safeguarding question here. Somebody sent in a question saying that doing lesson updates via the chat window in the Zoom room, contravenes child protection issues. And how do we get around this? Phil, can you shed any light on that?
Could you just elaborate a little bit more on that? Is this after the lesson, or is this?
Well, I'm not quite sure what this person means. Perhaps they could write in and explain a little bit further. But apparently, you can comment on the lesson, but those chat notes then contravene the child protection laws. So I don't quite follow that one. Please.
Yes, the question's a little unclear, but I'm guessing that if you're whatever online platform you're using, you should, if you're in a private teacher, you should really be using the parent's online platform. So any chat that goes on will be going to the parent, and it's up to then the parent to share that with their child. It leads on to a couple of things, a couple of sort of sensible protocols that we need to have in place for when teaching online. It's very important that the setting is correct. So, for example, you don't want to be teaching a teenager in their bedroom while they're wearing their pajamas. It's all that kind of thing. Ideally, you should be teaching in a place where the parent or guardian is within easy reach, and that could be for practical reasons, just to assist with tuning or with any sort of technical matters. You need to make sure that they're dressed appropriately. You need to make sure that you're dressed appropriately, that the background is as dull and bland as the wall behind me, and not any sort of beach scene that you may have. I mean, it's very important that you don't, I think, give too much away about your personal private life. It should be a sort of clinical setting. I think that's very important. And all of these things shouldn't be decided upon during the lesson or during the first lesson. I think these things should be discussed and worked out before the lessons start with the parent. And never be afraid, if you're uncomfortable with what you see or what's happening in a lesson, to stop the lesson. Because as John says, you can stop something, you can resolve the issue directly with the parent, and then you can resume later. It's very important to set and stick to these protocols.
Thanks, Phil, for that. I'm afraid we're going to have to leave it there now as we run out of time, but we're going to be here every week, this time, 7 o'clock on Friday nights, bringing you exciting news from the front line of music teaching. ESTA, we're here to help you. So thank you very much for joining us, everybody. Thank you to my panel, Phil, Ingrid, John and Dale, and for myself, Nicole. Good night.
Bye-bye.